There is a silence in certain images, a stillness that holds its breath. Look closer, past the faded varnish and the cheap wooden frame that so often houses this face, and focus on the eye. It is a perfect sphere of captured light, impossibly glossy, impossibly deep. And from its corner, a single crystalline tear begins its descent. It never falls. It is forever on the verge of release, a suspended moment of sorrow that has been hanging in living rooms, hallways, and thrift stores for over half a century. This is the crying boy, an image so common it borders on invisible, yet so potent it has etched itself into the darker corners of our cultural memory. To understand its unsettling power, we must first dissect its form. The artist, an Italian painter known as Giovanni Bragolin, a pseudonym for Bruno Amadio, was not a revolutionary. He was a craftsman of emotion. The Crying Boy paintings, a series of over 60 variations on a theme, are masterclasses in sentimental engineering. The visual choices are deliberate, almost scientifically calibrated for maximum emotional resonance. The eyes, as we've seen, are exaggerated, occupying a disproportionate amount of the face. They are rendered with a liquid quality that leverages the high-contrast lighting of the chiaroscuro tradition, making them appear like dark, sorrowful pools. This isn't just a child's sadness, it's a romanticized, theatrical grief. Then there is the tear, singular, perfect. It acts as the painting's emotional focal point, a glistening punctuation mark on a sentence of despair. Its hyper-realistic rendering stands in stark contrast to the often soft, almost blurry brushwork of the child's clothing. This deliberate shift in focus forces our gaze to the evidence of pain, making it the most real thing in the composition. The color palette reinforces this mood. Amadio favors a world of muted, melancholic tones. Somber sepia, bruised blues, and shadowy grays dominate, creating a visual atmosphere of perpetual twilight. There is no sunshine in the world of the crying boy, only the dim interior light of a room where something sad has just happened. Historically, the emergence of these prints in the post-war decades is no coincidence. Europe was a continent healing from a profound collective trauma. The grand, heroic narratives of the past had crumbled into ash. In their place arose a hunger for something more intimate, more personal. People sought not intellectual abstraction in their art, but emotional connection. The Crying Boy offered a direct, unfiltered hit of pathos. It presented a sadness that was understandable, contained within a frame, and crucially, not their own. It allowed for a kind of catharsis by proxy. Here was a child, often depicted in humble, slightly ragged clothing, a symbol of innocence confronting an unseen hardship. For a generation that had witnessed the suffering of children on an unimaginable scale, the image was both a painful echo and a safe vessel for displaced grief. Philosophically, this is where the image begins to trouble us. It transcends traditional artistic merit. You won't find Bragolin discussed alongside the great masters of portraiture. His work is not about capturing the unique soul of an individual subject. It's about rendering a universal emotional state. The Crying Boy has no specific story. He is every lost child, every moment of private sadness. This universality is both its strength and its most uncanny quality. It transforms the painting from a portrait into a symbol. It becomes an icon of sadness itself, an easily digestible narrative for a world that craved simple emotional truths. It is precisely this simplicity, this direct line to our empathy, that laid the groundwork for the strange and terrifying story that was to come. The journey of the Crying Boy from an artist's easel to a million living room walls is a story of technology and taste. In the mid-20th century, mass-production printing techniques revolutionized the art world. Suddenly, art was not something you had to visit in a hushed gallery. It was something you could own. It could hang above your fireplace, a silent companion to your daily life. This democratization of imagery gave rise to a new aesthetic category, kitsch. Kitsch, as the philosopher Theodore Adorno might argue, is pre-digested art. It's an object that provides an immediate, unreflective emotional response, demanding nothing from the viewer but their sentimentality. It is the simulation of a profound experience without the difficult work of genuine feeling. Bragolin's work was perfectly suited for this new market. The cryingboy prints were the epitome of kitsch. They were emotionally potent, aesthetically conventional, and, most importantly, affordable. They became a staple of working-class homes across Britain and Europe, a piece of decorative art that signaled a certain sensitivity, a heart open to the plight of the innocent. This is the great paradox of popular art. While the world of high art was exploring abstract expressionism and conceptualism, alienating many with its intellectual demands, these simple, sentimental prints were weaving themselves into the very fabric of society. Their cultural power, despite, or perhaps because of, their perceived lack of sophistication, was immense. They were not just pictures, they were members of the household, their melancholic gaze a constant presence in the domestic sphere. And then the stories began, a whisper that grew into a media firestorm. On September 4th, 1985, the British tabloid The Sun published an article with a chilling headline, "Blazing Curse of the Crying Boy." It told the story of a firefighter in Yorkshire who claimed to have attended numerous house fires where, amidst the charred ruins and blackened debris, a single object was repeatedly found completely unscathed, a print of the crying boy. The story was a sensation. The newspaper was flooded with calls from readers, all with their own terrifyingly similar accounts. The legend had found its spark. This narrative, of course, is not about supernatural phenomena. It is about human psychology. How does a piece of mass-produced kitsch transform into a cursed object, a harbinger of doom? The answer lies in the psychological impact of living with such an image. Imagine that sad, unblinking gaze following you day after day. It is a perpetual, silent accusation. The child's sorrow is constant, unresolvable. Over time, this can create a low-level sense of unease, an ambient dread within the home. The fire, then, becomes a violent, physical release of this psychological tension. The curse is a narrative we construct to explain an uncomfortable feeling we can't otherwise articulate. Furthermore, the survival of the print is the key to the legend's power. The prints were often produced on high-density compressed board, which is notoriously difficult to ignite and burn slowly. But the logical explanation is far less compelling than the mythological one. The image that survives the flames becomes a totem. It suggests that the sorrow it depicts is indestructible, more powerful even than fire. It transforms the boy from a victim into something more sinister, a survivor, a witness, or perhaps even the cause. The curse narrative is a potent example of how we imbue inanimate objects with agency and intention, projecting our own fears and anxieties onto the world around us. The crying boy ceased to be a simple decoration. It became a focal point for a collective, unspoken fear, proving that even the most sentimental art can curdle into something truly terrifying. What is it about that face that refuses to fade away? Decades after the tabloid frenzy, in an age of infinite digital images, the crying boy persists. Its endurance lies in the unsettling, almost preternatural quality of the child's gaze. It's a classic artistic technique known as the Mona Lisa effect, where the eyes of a subject in a two-dimensional work appear to follow the viewer as they move. But when this optical illusion is paired with raw, inconsolable grief, it creates a deeply unnerving intimacy. The crying boy doesn't just look sad, he looks at you. His gaze seems to penetrate the fourth wall, implicating you in his suffering. You are no longer a passive observer of art. You are a witness, locked in a silent, perpetual confrontation with his pain. This creates a profound sense of responsibility and helplessness, a visceral discomfort that is hard to shake. The urban legend of the curse found fertile ground in this visual unease. It provided a narrative framework for the strangeness of the image. The story, born in the age of print media, found a powerful second life in the digital age. In the early days of the internet, on forums and message boards, the tale of the crying boy was shared and embellished, becoming a foundational piece of what we now call creepypasta. It was detached from its original context, the specific fires in 1980s Britain, and became a more universal ghost story. Digital reproduction gave the image a new, viral form of ubiquity. Each pixelated JPEG, shared and reshared, carried with it the ghostly echo of the curse. The legend was no longer just a story, it was a self-perpetuating digital artifact, a meme before we had the language for it. Philosophically, the crying boy stands as one of the most fascinating case studies in the power of visual culture. It demonstrates that an object's meaning is not inherent, nor is it solely defined by its creator's intent. Bruno Amadio, a painter of sentimental portraits, could never have foreseen that his work would become a symbol of malevolence and supernatural dread. The meaning of the crying boy was forged in the crucible of collective experience, in the living rooms that housed it, the newspapers that sensationalized it, and the digital networks that resurrected it. The image became a cultural vessel filled with the anxieties of the societies that consumed it, fears about the sanctity of the home, about hidden traumas, and about the inexplicable nature of tragedy. The unsettling legacy of the crying boy is not that it is genuinely cursed, but that it reveals our profound need to create narratives to make sense of the world, especially its darker aspects. It shows how easily a symbol of innocence can be inverted to represent its opposite. The painting holds a mirror up to our own superstitions and the way our collective subconscious can latch onto a compelling image, imbuing it with a power far beyond its material form. It proves that any art, regardless of its perceived quality or its place in the established canon, can leave a deep and lasting impression on the human imagination. The crying boy still haunts us because he is a testament to the fact that we are the ghosts in the machine of culture, forever projecting our own stories and our own fears onto the silent faces that watch us from the walls. What images in your own life have taken on a meaning far beyond their original purpose? The art we live with is never truly silent. It speaks back to us in the language of our own experience. Thank you for watching.